Thanks for that, Helen. Now, let me just turn briefly before the break to Caroline Thomson-Smith. We are going to carry on this discussion after the break. You've been waiting very, very patiently. Now, Caroline, you're a campaigner. You are just a concerned citizen. You're part of a body called HS2 Rebellion.
Yes.
How widespread is the concern about HS2 out there on environmental grounds, on cost grounds, even on logic grounds?
Yeah. It is absolutely widespread from north to south and east to west. It is extremely rare to speak to any member of the public who is in favour of HS2. And normally, if you find somebody who is in favour of HS2, when you actually begin to expose some of the lies that HS2 peddles, such as it's a green infrastructure project, it very definitely isn't. Their eyes are open. They say, hang on a minute, what actually is going on here? But, you just have to look and scratch at the surface of what HS2 propaganda is showing to see very clearly it's not a green infrastructure project. So the opposition to HS2 amongst the members of the public is absolutely widespread. And one of the main reasons for that, of course, is that HS2 is a tremendous waste of taxpayers' money. The official budget is 106 billion, but Lord Berkeley, his costings have put it at 231.79 billion pounds per taxpayer.
That's Tony Berkeley, who wrote the deputy chairman of the Oakary Review, the official inquiry into the cost of HS2. Yeah. He then did a dissenting report. We're actually hoping to be joined by Tony Berkeley later in the show, but carry on.
Yeah, and indeed, that figure of about 200 billion, that's been spoken about quite freely in the Lord's debate last Thursday. So if you break that down, that's £7,700 per taxpayer. And quite frankly, who is going to ride on HS2? I'm not going to be able to afford a ticket. I doubt even with your salary that you would be able to afford a ticket, Liam. These are ordinary people whose tax money is being used in this way. We'll never benefit from it. We won't be able to ride that train. Who will? A few politicians who will probably bang it on their expenses. And guess what? The taxpayer will be paying their £7,700 and for a ticket for politicians to ride on it. So when you start to unpack it and explain it like that to members of the public, they are horrified that the government should be pressing ahead with this project that is not green, it's not cost effective, it's a tremendous waste of our money. Henry spoke about HS2 being a green project, a green infrastructure project, and there being no alternative. I absolutely disagree with him. For £40 billion, not 230, but for £40 billion, we could insulate every home in Britain. And that's in the government manifesto. And they're failing to honour that promise to the people that elected them to insulate every home in Britain. What would that do for us? It would create jobs, thousands of jobs. It would cut carbon emissions. It would cut fuel bills for ordinary people. And it would prevent, do you know that I was horrified to read this statistically, but 12,000 people this winter will die from fuel poverty. I would hate to think that my mother and some of my clients I'm a hairdresser, I have lots of elderly clients. I would hate to think that some of those are amongst that statistic.
Hold that thought, Caroline, because we are going to carry on this discussion after the break. You're watching On the Money with me, Henry, because Caroline's been waiting very, very patiently. You're champing at the bit. She's champing at the bit. So, Henry, put it right back at you.
Yes.
So what's your environmental case for scrapping HS2?
I'm delighted that Henry brought up the subject of aviation. And this is another massive lie that HS2 are telling the members of the public, that somehow HS2 will miraculously transfer thousands of people from the air onto HS2. This is a lie. HS2's own figures show that only 1% of their passengers will be from aviation, just 1%. And while we're on the subject of that also, only 4% shift from car onto HS2. 69%, I believe it is, will be from conventional, less polluting rail. And 20% will be from people that didn't make the trip before. That's HS2's own figure. So it horrifies me to think that people like me, ordinary people, are being bamboozled and hoodwinked by this propaganda that HS2 regurgitate to say that it's going to draw people out of the air, that it's going to shift people out of their cars. HS2's own figures actually show that to be absolutely not the case.
Do you think it's all about the lobbying power of big business, and developers and engineering companies? And
Absolutely it is. I mean, let's not be mistaken here. HS2 is nothing but a shuttle service between airports. Airport expansion at a time of ecological crisis, of environmental crisis, of climate crisis. We've seen airports being expanded at a time that airports should not be expanded. And HS2, if you notice directly, is it any coincidence that it links airports?
Hold that thought, because we're going to go for the final word to Helen Thomas. Helen, I bow to you in most things. What do you think of the debate you've heard? And do you think there's any chance, you understand politics very closely, do you think there's any chance of stopping this HS2 juggernaut?
I think it's highly unlikely, but then again, we all know that Boris is something of a wobbler.